Tensions in the South China Sea have escalated once again, amplifying an already volatile maritime environment where rival claims, military maneuvers and pressured fishing communities collide. The latest confrontation between China and the Philippines involving water cannons, ramming allegations and competing narratives has highlighted not only how fragile stability in the region has become, but also how quickly routine maritime patrols can spiral into geopolitical flashpoints. At the centre of the most recent dispute is a maritime encounter near contested waters where Philippine civilian and Coast Guard vessels were attempting to support local fishermen. According to Manila, Chinese Coast Guard ships used high-pressure water cannons against Philippine boats and later rammed one of the vessels. Beijing has countered with its own version of events, claiming that the Philippine ships entered waters illegally, provoking Chinese law enforcement measures. These sharply conflicting accounts have deepened mistrust and intensified diplomatic pressure across Southeast Asia. The confrontation began early in the morning when Philippine vessels approached the disputed area to carry out a routine escort mission for fishermen who rely on these waters for their livelihoods. The Philippine Coast Guard reported that multiple Chinese vessels moved to intercept them, closing distance in what Manila described as an aggressive maneuver intended to block access to fishing grounds historically used by Filipino communities. From the Philippine side, officials described a situation in which their vessels were deliberately targeted. One senior maritime officer explained that the Chinese ships first used long-range acoustic devices to issue warnings, followed quickly by bursts of high-pressure water. These blasts, captured on video and widely circulated, struck the hulls and superstructures of the Philippine boats, jolting crew members and drenching onboard equipment. The Philippines condemned the act as coercive and dangerous. A senior official emphasized the country's determination not to retreat, saying, "Despite these bullying tactics and aggressive actions, we will not be intimidated or driven away." The official said this resolve is rooted not only in sovereignty claims, but also in the responsibility to safeguard Filipino fishermen who depend on these waters. China, however, provided a sharply different account. Beijing argued that the Philippine vessels had entered waters under Chinese jurisdiction without permission, prompting what it described as lawful measures aimed at maintaining control and ensuring maritime order. Chinese authorities insisted that the maneuvers, including the water cannon, were necessary responses to what they considered foreign intrusion. Officials stated that the Philippine boats ignored repeated instructions to leave, framing the confrontation as a circumstance created by Manila's refusal to comply. In Beijing's view, the Philippines is escalating tensions through persistent missions to disputed reefs and shoals. Chinese maritime agencies argue that such missions violate Chinese domestic law, which Beijing applies to virtually the entire South China Sea under its expansive 9-line claim. Manila rejects these claims, pointing to the 2016 international arbitral ruling that invalidated China's sweeping maritime assertions, a ruling that China refuses to recognize. The most contested aspect of the incident is the alleged ramming. According to Manila, after repeated water cannon blasts, one Chinese vessel moved abruptly toward a smaller Philippine boat, striking its stern and causing structural damage. The collision was not catastrophic, but Manila argues it was deliberate, a method of intimidation designed to scare Filipino crews away from the area. Philippine maritime officials said the ramming was executed with precision, indicating it was not accidental. They noted that Chinese ships often operate in tight formations and frequently attempt blocking maneuvers, but the decision to make physical contact marked an escalation. China, meanwhile, denied responsibility and accused the Philippines of dangerous navigation. In Beijing's telling, it was the Philippine boat that suddenly altered course, leading to an unavoidable collision. Chinese officials argued that their Coast Guard vessels acted with restraint and according to protocol, blaming Manila for creating a volatile situation through what they call provocations. No injuries were reported on either side. However, damage to the Philippine vessel reinforced Manila's position that China's use of force in disputed waters is increasing in intensity. This incident is the latest in a long chain of confrontations between China and the Philippines. Over the past several years, Chinese vessels, including Coast Guard ships, maritime militia boats, and military assets, have been involved in blockades, water cannon incidents, close-range shadowing, and laser emitter interference directed at Philippine crews. Such actions are widely viewed by analysts as part of China's grey zone strategy, a campaign of pressure designed to assert control without crossing thresholds that would trigger armed conflict. Water cannons, physical blocking, and ramming are favoured tools because they create shock and disruption while technically avoiding lethal force. For the Philippines, however, these tactics have placed enormous strain on both government agencies and local fishing communities. Fishermen say that Chinese vessels often prevent them from entering areas they have used for decades, while Philippine authorities face a growing challenge: how to maintain presence without risking a broader confrontation. The Philippines has been expanding its maritime patrol operations, investing in new surveillance capabilities, and strengthening cooperation with regional partners and allies, including the United States and Japan. These moves reflect a growing recognition in Manila that the South China Sea dispute is not only a matter of territorial claims, but also a test of national resilience and economic security. Following the latest incident, Philippine officials reaffirmed their commitment to supporting fishermen and maintaining an active presence in the disputed waters. The government reiterated that it would continue to file diplomatic protests and record every confrontation as part of a documented pattern of what Manila views as China's escalating aggression. A spokesperson from the Maritime Security Bureau noted that while the Philippines seeks peaceful solutions, it cannot withdraw from waters that it considers part of its legally recognized exclusive economic zone. Fishermen, the spokesperson said, are among the most vulnerable members of coastal communities, and protecting their access to resources is a matter of national duty. One message from Manila stood out: "We will continue protecting our fishermen's livelihoods." Officials emphasized that escort missions will continue despite the risks. China's official reaction has remained consistent. It views the Philippines' presence in the disputed waters as unlawful and destabilizing. Chinese authorities say their Coast Guard will continue to take what they describe as necessary measures to maintain order. Beijing argues that the Philippines is intentionally provoking confrontations to draw international sympathy and external military support. Chinese maritime regulators maintain that the disputed zone falls under their jurisdiction, asserting an interpretation of maritime boundaries that most of the international community considers excessive. While Beijing often speaks of peaceful development, its actions at sea send different signals, reinforcing its determination to solidify control over contested features through constant patrols and administrative expansion. Behind the diplomatic exchanges and maritime standoffs is a human reality that receives far less attention: the lives of Filipino fishermen living with daily uncertainty. For these fishermen, the South China Sea is not an abstract geopolitical arena. It is their source of income, food, and survival. Many report that Chinese ships frequently block access to fishing areas, shining lights at night to force boats away, or using loudspeakers to issue warnings in Mandarin. Over time, this has created psychological and economic strain, as fishermen face both danger at sea and diminishing catches. Some have been forced to travel farther, spending more on fuel and venturing into rougher waters to avoid Chinese patrols. Others recount experiences of being chased or intimidated, leading many families to question whether fishing can remain a viable livelihood. Government support missions, like the one involved in the recent incident, are therefore seen as essential. They provide a degree of safety, help restore confidence, and symbolize Manila's commitment to communities that feel increasingly exposed. The latest confrontation has implications far beyond bilateral relations. The South China Sea is a key international waterway, carrying a significant portion of global trade. Any escalation or miscalculation risks disrupting supply chains and triggering broader geopolitical instability. Several Southeast Asian nations, including Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia, are closely watching the developments. Many of them have faced pressure from Chinese vessels in their own waters and see Manila's experience as reflective of a broader challenge posed by China's maritime assertiveness. For external powers, particularly the United States, The confrontation raises questions about deterrence, alliance commitments, and regional stability. While Washington has reaffirmed its treaty obligations to defend the Philippines in the event of an armed attack, grey zone tactics complicate the line between aggression and conflict. The ambiguity allows China to challenge its neighbours without triggering direct military intervention. Diplomatic analysts warn that if these incidents persist, the risk of miscalculation will grow. A ramming incident, a broken mast, or a misinterpreted manoeuvre could quickly escalate, and with multiple military and civilian vessels operating in congested waters, the potential for escalation is real. The immediate future is likely to see a continuation of the pattern now well established. Philippines vessels will escort fishermen, China will continue to confront them, and both sides will issue conflicting statements and diplomatic protests. However, several developments could shape the trajectory of the dispute. More assertive Philippine patrols, Manila has signalled it will increase presence rather than withdraw. Expanded Chinese deployments, Beijing may move additional maritime militia or Coast Guard assets into the area. International engagement, countries in Southeast Asia and beyond may step up diplomatic pressure or increase naval visibility. Fishermen at risk. Local communities will remain vulnerable as long as confrontations persist. Ultimately, the situation reflects a widening gap between China's strategic ambitions and the Philippines' determination to defend its maritime rights. Both sides appear firmly committed to their positions, and without a pathway for compromise, tensions are likely to continue simmering.